Hi, welcome back, everyone. Hope you had a good lunch break and also potentially a coffee. You should go into that post-lunch snoozy mindset. We are here for a great session on Cloud TRE solutions, reference implementations, and blueprints. And we're going to be joined, and we're going to hear from Raymond, Hounon, and Rujuta Sanap from Google, Dr. Chris Cole from the SATRE project, and James Robinson from the Turing Institute. So without further ado, let's jump straight into it.
Okay. Well, thanks. Thanks firstly for the opportunity to speak to you today about the SATRE project. So it's not a 20th century French philosopher, but it's the standard architecture for TREs. I'm Chris Cole. I'm a senior lecturer from the University of Dundee. I'm also the director of the Alleviate Pain Data Hub and also the co-academic director for the Health Informatics Centre, which is one of the 4 regional safe havens in Scotland looking after NHS patient data for research. And as I say, I'll be talking about the SATRE project today. So the key thing that we wanted to do right from the start, and it's really great to hear that today there's been a lot of talk about transparency and openness. And the SATRE project did this from day one. We did everything through GitHub. The documentation and everything was raised as issues. We discussed this on the issues and within the team. And so that was a core principle of the project that we ran. And the specification is open access and open source as well. And we blogged throughout the project. So feel free to go and have a look at the Medium blog around that. The landscape, I don't really need to tell you about the landscape, just to reiterate all the great things that Simon said yesterday morning, which actually feels like quite a long time ago now. But TREs are where we are now. It's the future. You know, that's nothing controversial to say that now, I think. And the thing is, TREs have been around a long time. Here at HIC, we've run a TRE for the last 10 years or so. But everyone has lots of TREs. Hands up who runs a TRE or is closely associated with a TRE here. How many have we got? Oh, wow, loads. Yeah, OK, that's not as many as I was expecting. So everyone has got a TRE almost, you know. So, and it's really fragmented, and different solutions and different ways of doing things. And I don't think that is news to say that either. And what I'd like to highlight also, and I'm not going to talk about, but we need to consider risk appetites as well. And I think that's something that if the National Data Guardian is still here, that would be something that would be really good to try and look at over the next 3 years, is how do we manage the differential risk appetites across the UK? Because they can put up some real barriers around being able to do research. So onto the project. We ran this in 3 phases, and the idea was to take the input of the whole community, or as much as we could, and to define what a specification for a TRE would look like. And then we reflected that back to them in a simple specification. And then we're now at the kind of guide and sustain. It's like we've released our first version of the specification. How does it work? Does it fit the environment? Does it fit the community? And it really was a collaborative project. There was around 60 organizations that involved with the project throughout. And they changed quite a lot what we were going to do when we wrote the proposal and kind of threw it out the window. We weren't going to do information governance, but everyone said you need to do information governance, so then we did. And we, the principles and things like that were really formed around the discussions with the community. And one of the strengths of the project were these collaboration cafes. So every fortnight for about 6 months, we ran these things, which were beautifully run by Hari, and set those up, and they were great. And they brought in the people and brought in the voices, and in a completely equitable way. It was great. And mustn't forget the public. So in our team, we had Anthony and Jill that were part of the core team right from the proposal stage to the end. And they helped engage the public voice and helped us use the right language in the specification as well. So what is the specification? It's a collection of capabilities that TREs should have, broken down into 4 pillars, as you can see them there, and the 28 capabilities are in those things. And we've defined 160 statements around those capabilities, which you can look at and compare yourself to them, 75 of which we deemed as mandatory. And that, if you use the specification, that is what we define currently as the minimum specification for a UK TRE within the DARE program, within health. And essentially, it's a web page of statements that you can read and go through. You can find it on the web, do a search for SATRE specification. It'll be the top 3 hits, one for the Google page, one for this one, and one for our Medium page. So feel free to have a look at that. And the really key thing is the evaluation bit. There's a self-evaluation form you can go through and look at yourself. And currently, it's a simple spreadsheet. We all love our Excel spreadsheets. And there's a scoring column, and then there's a narrative column that you can put in and fill in. And what I'd really ask of everyone who has a TRE to please try and use this and see if it works for you. If you see there's some real big omissions or things that don't fit, then please feedback to us around that. And evaluation is dead easy, 0, 1, 2, or not applicable. There's quite a lot, so I would suggest it would take maybe a few of you in your team to do it over a couple of sessions. And if you need some help around what it kind of looks like, we at HIC and the Turing Institute have run it against our own TREs and provided those publicly for people to see. So if we go back, there's a link on the bottom of the page on the left there to get to our own evaluations. And the important thing is to be able to identify where the strengths and the gaps and the opportunities there are in the TRE community, and also within the specification. What's missing? What's wrong? What needs to be improved? And so, it's about finding improvement. So where are we currently with the SATRE project? So in Scotland, it's being used in 2 projects. One initiated by the Scottish Government to renew the Safe Haven Charter that all the safe havens in Scotland need to run under. And also we're running across the regional safe havens in Scotland to try and reharmonize ourselves against the specification and see where we can find improvement. And that includes the governance. So we're trying to work at streamlining the governance across the safe haven framework. In England, we have the NHS SDE network through the work spearheaded by the, what is it again now, South Central West Support Unit. They are using the specification and building upon it, and you can see there's a GitHub page on that, and there's an architecture diagram of the plan for the SDEs in this space. And latterly, Carol has already talked about Entrust. So led by Elixir, the Entrust project is also looking to develop a TRE blueprint, of which SATRE is part of that discussion. Just started this month, and so 34 partners, 17 countries, 3 years, so that's kind of really quite exciting. So it's really interesting. There's lots of things, and I think there's really initiative and excitement around trying to do some standardization and unification and trying to find a blueprint that fits all our needs so that we can build our federation, our disclosure control tools on top of something that we all can agree on. So thank you for listening. There's the link to the specification as the top one, but like I say, if you just Google SATRE specification, you'll find it. And thanks to Dare, and more importantly, thank you to my collaborative partners in the project. They were amazing, really good project, managed to do so much in so little time. And also everyone who contributed, public and stakeholders and everyone. And so thank you for your time.
Hi, so I'm James Robinson. I'm going to talk a bit about the Alan Turing Institute's Data Safe Haven, which is an open source TRE that runs in the cloud. So we've got a team of people at Turing who've been working on this for about the last 5 years, various iterations of this set of people. And we've been trying as a project to remove barriers to working safely and effectively with sensitive data by promoting and demonstrating a culture of open community-led development of interoperable foundational infrastructure and governance. So firstly, why TREs? I mean, hopefully, most of you in the room have a feeling about, why we should be using TREs. But yeah, essentially, a TRE is a computer system that's going to allow us to do research on sensitive data in a controlled way with built-in security controls and user access management and controls and checks over inputs and outputs of the system, so things like data and the results coming out of it. Obviously, we have the 5 safes that have been mentioned before. Safe people, safe settings, safe products, safe data, and safe outputs. All very important components of a TRE. And of course, it's not just a technical solution. The data governance policies and processes are extremely important too. So the project we've been working on at the Turing has sort of different components to it, really, that all coalesce around the idea of an open reference implementation. So we have the information governance, as I just said, infrastructure as code, community building. So the infrastructure as code part is obviously around building a reproducible architecture environment. On information governance, we have a framework that goes along this for sort of standardized, auditable, accessible ways of making decisions about passage of information. And then community building, we're heavily involved in organizations like the UK TRE Community and other organizations like that. Around sort of the wider TRE space. And of course, none of this really makes any sense unless you're actually doing it in practice. So we also have an implementation of the code that we've written that's deployed at Turing, and we use it for real-world applications, real data, real projects. So why do we think infrastructure as code is important? It's a great way to get identical environments. So our use case is really for short-term products. We're not the front end to a big data set like some TREs are. Each product is coming with its own set of data for a particular product. And we really want to be able to say, we'll spin up a new environment that's going to be just as secure, just as safe as any other one. We can do it at any time, very short notice. Infrastructure code also can be cheaper to set up, where you're reducing the time and money cost in setting up environments. It can be easier to link different products together, and easier to verify that the configuration you've set up is actually the one you wanted. So what is the data safe haven? So it's a sort of hub and spoke architecture. So we've got a centralized management area, and then each product has its own dedicated space. In the management area, we do identity and authentication management. But then each product has a completely sort of isolated environment which can't talk to any other project going on. What it looks like, essentially, is a thing that lives inside your browser. So you go to the appropriate web page. You get given, you see a login screen where you need your username, your password, multi-factor authentication. Once you've signed in, then you get a dashboard that looks a little bit like this, with different options for things you could connect to, and these can be customized on so each product will have its own version of these, and it could be that each user inside a product could see a slightly different view, of different compute resources that were available to them. And then once you log on, you get a sort of standard desktop-style environment that hopefully people are used to, although maybe not as much these days as they used to be. But yeah, a sensible, performant data science environment with lots of tools built in there for you to access the data, and the data is only available through this interface. And of course, things like copy and paste and stuff like that are restricted. So why should we be using a solution like this? So first of all, why use an open source TRE? So we think that code developed in the open is likely to be of higher quality. More people are looking at it. There's more opportunity for people to identify problems and to contribute fixes back to them. People are free to use and adapt and contribute to our project. We want everyone to benefit from the work that we've been doing. I was mentioned earlier about the fragmented state of the TRE space, and we want everyone to be able to take our learnings and apply them to their own use cases. We want to reduce duplication. We want to solve our problems, for everyone, if that's possible. And of course, there aren't licensing problems. There's no chance we're going to sort of pull the rug from underneath you and say, you've got to stop using our code. It's just always going to be available. It's always there. So yeah, our open source code base, code and documentation are freely available, including the documentation of our processes that we use at Turing. We're using this in production, as I mentioned. At Turing, it's also being used by some other people, some of whom I think are in the room at the moment. And it's all built on top of sort of widely used tools that should be familiar to lots of developers, I think. So we've got a lot of involvement from our users and from the wider TRE community. We think listening to the community is really important to try and understand what the needs of the community are and try and adapt to them. We've got customizable security controls. As I mentioned before, a key thing for us is that every project is quite different. They come often with very different data sets, very different requirements. So we want to make sure our environments are productive, but also customizable to the needs, the particular needs of any particular project. As I just mentioned, our operational processes are also freely available. They're on GitHub. We have a web page that's built from that as well, because we think openness about how your TRE works should also extend to your policies and processes, and you should be public about those if possible. It's not possible for everyone. And of course, we're standards compliant. As Chris just mentioned, we're meeting the SATRE standard, we're meeting DSPT requirements, and we're also looking at other certifications for our environment. In terms of wider community work, we're of course engaged with work being done across the UK TRE landscape, and these are things that we think are really important to enable knowledge exchange, to share best practices, to foster collaborations with other people, to avoid duplication, as I mentioned earlier, and move towards standardization. Not necessarily that everyone should be using the same code base, but that things like interoperability and federation, as everyone here knows, they're important things, and we want to make them as easy as possible and try and remove some friction there. People are very welcome to get involved. So we have, for the Safe Haven, links here to our documentation, our repository on GitHub. We've got a Slack channel where you can join to ask any questions, also an email address. And then similarly for the UK TRE community, some links there to their Read the Docs pages and their community links as well. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Let it be known that they've all finished in phenomenally good time. So if you're looking for efficient conference speakers, you've got a great panel here. Are there any immediate questions from anyone here or any more online? Yeah, we'll go on straight away.
Thank you. Great talks. I have a question specifically around how you're engaging with the commercial sector. So if I think of our three sort of large cohort studies in the UK, so Our Future Health, UK Biobank, Genomics England, we've all subcontracted the build of our trusted research environments to third-party providers. And obviously, it's quite critical when we come to join up and federate data analytics across those three research environments, we will need common standards. So I'm really keen to hear sort of how you're engaging with the commercial sector to kind of influence them to more broadly enable us to maximize the value of the data that we're collecting.
So I guess from the SATRE perspective, we're speaking to Google and the others and AWS and others to say, if you want to build something, here's a specification that kind of lays out the starting point. Obviously, your individual needs can be tailored to suit what you need, but this can also be a specification document. And I know there are people speaking informally. I've been speaking informally too, and they're saying they're using it as a kind of an RFI, document for okay, this is what we want. Please use this as your starting point, and then that's kind of the initiation rather than. Like we did at HIC, we spent 2 years in discussion to develop a new TRE with a cloud provider. Actually, now this gets you up to speed very quickly, and you can get down to what you need specifically. So I think it's kind of an enabler.
And then I guess from the Turing perspective, we're not trying to sell our product. We're making it freely available to anyone who wants to use it. But we do think standardization is important, and that's why we want to be part of these wider projects. So we meet the SATRE specification, that we're part of the UK TRE community, and we have those discussions. And then sort of like thinking from the UK TRE community's perspective, I think, it's hugely important to make sure that the community does reach out to commercial providers and that they're included in these conversations. It'd be silly to pretend that they don't exist, and we want as many voices in the conversation as possible.
Thank you. Are there any more hands out there? Got one here from Anthony.
Going to be a difficult one.
Hi, I'm Anthony. I'm one of the patient members from Alleviate. I'm probably not alone in watching my phone whilst these presentations have been going on and seeing the budget and seeing that £3.4 billion has just been gifted to the NHS to revolutionise its IT system. Is this heaven or hell for standardisation? Because we've got 10 GP systems that don't talk to each other. We know from CoConnect that it was very difficult even just to get standard COVID data from different labs around the country. In different countries, there were different standards again. How do we fix this? And is this heaven or is this hell?
Shall I start? Thanks, Anthony, for that question. Yeah, it's a difficult one. I mean, Piers talked about it yesterday in terms of, there's lots of great innovation in the research field, but then in terms of translating that into routine practice, there's a huge gulf. And I think there's a lot of investment required in terms of training and understanding the needs of moving research outcomes into the clinic. And I think, talking about giving a lot of money to the NHS, it depends what you mean by that. Is it for frontline staff? Is it for IT? So I think if it's specifically for IT, so I don't think that will really help here. I think it'll maybe help if it's digital services and digital health thing, but if it's for upgrading their IT, then I don't think it'll make a huge difference. So I hope it's heaven, but I fear it might be hell.
I would just say it's not the first time that we've given the NHS a load of money to revolutionise their IT systems, and it hasn't worked before, but maybe it will this time.
Cool. We do have a question online from Helen about costs. The question is, how can the cloud platforms help control costs for researchers? They have a pipeline that they're manually benchmarking at each iteration per cloud platform, but it's not very sustainable. So I guess for Turing, for Google, do you guys have sustainable cost models, and is it part of SATRE?
So for us, I'd say we're not a cloud provider. We're using cloud services, and we do care about costs. We try and keep them as low as possible when new types of products are released, or new SKUs that let you reduce costs by, for instance, by having things that sort of automatically lower their resource usage or something over time. We try and introduce those. But yeah, we're not fundamentally the people coming up with the cost models. So that's the best we can do at the moment.
And I'd add, I think there's been lots of talk of really great innovative stuff and development that's going on in this field, but I think there's not much been talked about sustainability of costs and what is the business model or the cost model for trusted research environments. A lot of the work that's been done and supported that does for the routine research is core funded or is funded through some research funding, and it's not necessarily all that sustainable. And I think thinking, there's some very large, high-profile projects which have, a finite amount of money. What is the long-term view of those, and what is it that we can do as a community to make sure these environments are sustainable for the long term, not just for the next 3 or 5 year funding cycle?
Just to very briefly add to that, I would say, development of these things, it's not going to be the case that you've built your cloud platform, your TRE, and that's it, and you never have to change it. You're always going to need to keep updating it, and you're going to need people to keep working on it. So there's a need for software engineering time, as long as you want TREs to exist.
Thank you very much, everybody. Unfortunately, we're out of time. So thank you to James, Chris, Rujuta, and Raymond. I think everyone's hanging around for the afternoon, right?
Yes.
To conversations and more questions if you have them. Otherwise, big round of applause, please, for the panel.